Okay, well now we've got all the drawing commands done that you should be able to go back and forth and use those. We've also hit up move, copy, rotate, and mirror. So we're going to hit up a couple more of these modify commands over here. All of them are which are very important. It's going to make your life easier when you're doing some drawings. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, as I always jokingly say, put some spaghetti up on the screen and just put some random lines that are crossing so you can see different things. And maybe I'll add a couple of circles and stuff. Okay, so, okay. The one that's going to be probably the most helpful for you right here is this one called trim. And if you look underneath, you have trim, you have extend. Now, I'm waiting for them to combine these two commands together because if you're in trim, you hold down shift, it turns to extend. If you're in extend, you hold down shift, it turns into a trim. So let me show you how it works. And let me show you how it used to work only. In the past, you would have to take trim and you'd have to pick your cutting edges. So for instance, if I wanted to trim anything that's inside this circle, this would be like the pair of scissors. Once you pick your cutting edge, you can right click and then things will trim away. So see where this one goes from the edge to the edge? See this circle here? It's going to take it, and notice it's cutting it all the way from the edge of the circle to the edge of the circle. This would trim up. So that's what it is. That's how it will trim. You can trim on the outside, the inside. This is like your knife blade, okay? So that's your trim command. Let me undo that and bring that back. And let me show you something else with the trim. Once again, with the knife blade, if I go here and here, I can right click and cut what I need gone, like this. And you'll notice the only other thing I could probably trim is this one here. And that is because it's cutting over there. So you're very limited when you do it this way, but it can be very exact and very helpful. So let's go back again. Now this is what I like. They added several revisions ago, which is awesome. If you go to trim and you hit your space bar. Now everything is trimmable. That's trimmable. This is trimmable. Now I can go through and just keep picking whichever I need as trimming. Okay. Now one thing to notice, see this little line right up here? You can go over it. It's not going to ever trim. And think about why won't that trim? The reason this will not trim is because it's not crossing anything. It's not extending to anything. So if you needed to get rid of that, that would be a delete or an erase. So that's your trim. Trim is very simple. But make sure you understand if you pick the item first and right click, that becomes a knife edge. If you just hit your space bar, everything's trimmable. Sometimes one is better than the other. So you have to think on what you need. Now, underneath it is extend. It works exactly the same way. If I pick the object, right click, everything I want to can then extend to that area, such as if I pick, let's see, I need some more lines in this one here to really give you a good idea. If I pick this, I don't know what's going to extend to it. Right click, that one will extend. That one doesn't, but this one will probably. So anything that's continuing on will extend to it. Let's see if this one will go. No, because this is going to probably shoot out here and not actually meet it. So there's your extend. Once again, if you pick extend and hit your space bar, everything is now able to extend. So I can extend to there. I can extend, this is going to go too far over the other way. So there's lots of things you can do for the extend. Now, let me show you this one. If I am in trim and I hit my space bar and I start trimming things, trimming, notice this one trimmed from here all the way to this. It didn't trim out the whole thing because that was in the way. Now, if I hold my shift and I go back and pick these lines again, they all become extending. See how that works? So this is going to go for extending. So trim becomes extend, extend becomes trim. Same thing. If I go through here and I go extend, I hit my space bar. let's see, if I extend, I think everything's extended. So that one's going to mess me up. So if I hit my shift, I can then go ahead and trim, let it go, hit my line. So toggle those back and forth. Those are very, very helpful. Now let me add one more thing in here for you with the trim command. And let me do a couple of things and copy these over. I wanted a bunch of lines just to show you. I'm going to do a line in this area here. Okay, there's another thing you can do with your trim or with your extend. It works the same way. When you pick trim, let's go ahead and hit our space bar. That makes everything trimmable. But now what we can do is see down here where it says fence. I'm going to type in F for fence. Now watch. It's going to turn into this little area so I can pick, come out here, I can come in here, pick this way. So you see how I'm just drawing like a weird little line? So I'm only touching the areas I want. So only those lines will do. So fence is very helpful getting specific areas. And once again, you can do some other things with your selecting. When I pick trim, I hit my space bar. If I come from this way, they all trim here. If I pick my trim again and I go here, I can do it the same way. I can come this way and trim. I can do my crossing. I can do my windowing. So you have lots of ways. I just want to add that little fence thing in. So if you want to pause it for a little bit and play around with trim and extend so you'll fully get the idea of what's going on, that's going to be helpful for you. Okay? All right, now let's clear this mess off and let's get into fillet. I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to come over here and do some lines like this. All right, the next one I want you to know is fillet. And remember when we did the rectangle and we had the fillet and we had the chamfer? This is the same thing, but fillet and chamfer. If you pick your fillet, and I want you to see the radius is 0, and you pick your line and pick your line, it automatically closes it. There's no arc to it. Very, very helpful. If I come in here with my fillet, and now I take and go R for radius, and say I type in my 1 inch for a radius, I can now pick this, and it'll put my fillet on. Once one is done over here, I can do the same thing again, fillet. Let's go R for radius, and let's make this one a little smaller, 0.5. And let's pick this, and it'll fillet it up. The thing you've got to remember is that your line, for example, if I had a line that was only, let's take it here, let's say this was 1 inch, okay? And if I did another line over here, and I said this one was going to be 2 inches. If I go to put a fillet on here, and I did a radius of 2 inches, if I went to pick this and this, it's not going to let me do it. And the reason is this line needs to be longer. One of the ways you can fix it, just take this line, extend it. Now back to fillet. And see, the radius is already set for 2. I don't have to keep going back. If my radius is set for 2, I'm good. So I can come back here to here, and now I've got my fillet. So you can fix things like that. Once again, when you have lines, what I want you to start getting away from, let me move this one up so you can see, is if you had to close these 2 lines here, what a lot of people do is they will come in and they'll say, oh, I'll just take a line here and I'll bring this out to here, and then I'll come back and I'll do this trim like this, and you can trim it all up. Well, the problem is now you got 2 separate lines, and that's not good for your drawing. It can really mess you up later on. So let's put all this stuff back. You can use your extend if you want and trim if you want, or you can come into fillet. But look, I got a radius here. So I'm going to pick my R for radius. I'm going to go 0. And now I pick the areas I want to keep. I want to keep this part. and I want to keep this part. So it extends, trims all at the same time. But that's an important thing for you to remember is when you have areas like this, and let's copy this over so you can see this. If I did my fillet and I chose this line and this line, do you see where it's going to disappear? It's keeping this. If I repeat my fillet and I do this line and this line, you see where the other part's going to disappear. So when you're doing the fillet, you pick the lines you truly want to keep. That works out really, really well. Okay, so there's our fillet. Now I'm going to go into the chamfer, and I'm not going to go into the chamfer too much because plain and simple with chamfer, it is the same things as we did before. We can come in down here. We can do a distance. We can do an angle. And also, by the way, with the trim, let me show you. When you're back, and I should have mentioned this earlier, it's usually not necessary. With fillet, you can have the trim mode on or the trim mode off. If the trim mode is on, it turns like this. If the trim mode is off, it's going to leave the two lines straight through here. They're not going to trim these away. So you can toggle that off. Okay, back to chamfer. Sorry about that. With chamfer, you can do it as a distance or an angle. It's very much the same. If you do it as a distance, I can say my first distance, say I want it to be an inch, and my second distance, I want it to be an inch. I can come in here and pick here and here. Now, in order to get rid of it, I have to go repeat chamfer, D for distance, or choose the word distance, and I have to go back to 0, 0, and then that will go ahead and take this back where it's not going to have the line on it. So I'm not going to go too much into the chamfer. It's not that we use it that often, but you can use it as angles, things like that. You can do chamfers such as, let's erase this one here. We can do something as a chamfer with a distance. Let's go 1 inch in one direction and 2 inches in the other direction. See that? So this way went 1 inch, this way went 2 inch. This is good when we're working mechanical and they're asking for a nut or a bolt and they tell you there's a chamfer there. So that's what the deal is with chamfers. Okay? So we've gotten trim. We've done trim and extend. Remember, there's underneath. And once again, whatever you use last will pop up onto the top. So you have trim and extend, you have fillet, and you have chamfer. Those are helpful. Let's go on to, let's do stretch. Stretch can be really very helpful. Let's set something up here. Okay, let's set something as basic as this kind of a shape, like so. And let's add some circles in here. Just doing this so you can see a couple of things. Stretch will be very, very helpful. Third 9 weeks when we're working on our house project, we'll be able to move the walls and doors so much easier by stretching things, so it'll help us out a lot. Here's an object we have. When you use stretch, you can only select by window or polygon. You cannot go in and pick. So you must see the stretch. So when we come in here, anything that it is crossing, it will take like this, and you can stretch wherever your little heart needs it to be. With your stretch, if you go like this and notice that circle's completely inside it, it will move that circle in same ratio and distance where it is. See how weird that is? Now, if I do my stretch again and I come back and notice the two pointed lines, this line and this line, are going to be completely inside, and these back lines are only being crossed. So watch the difference now. Those stay the same and those lines move. So you got to remember on what you want to do with stretch. It can be very, very helpful. So with stretch, you have to, if you don't see green, it's not going to work. If I came in here and did stretch this way, it's not going to do it. So it's got to be that green. So remember, stretch is always by crossing. If it's just crossing over it like that, only these two guys will move. If I just take half that circle, it's not going to move that circle. So if I do my stretch where I get the whole circle, wrong direction. If I get the whole circle in there, it's now going to move it where I need it to be. Notice it keeps it in the same ratio where it is. And the last thing is if the whole piece, now take a look. You've got that whole angled part, so you can do some stretching. So that's your stretch command. Really good thing when you know how to use it and, as you practice with it. So stretch is very helpful. Okay, let's get rid of this real quick. All right, let's come over here and do some things. We're going to do the next one, which is going to be our scale. And scale is really a good thing. Okay, for instance, and let's just go to something as simple as this. Let's say that we want to scale and we need this object to be half the size. You pick scale, select, right click. Once again, here's the infamous base point. So say I take the base point here. I need that to be half the size. Type in 0.5. It's going to scale it down. If you need it to be 2 times the size, type in 2. It's going to go up. So remember, if you're going smaller than 1, it's going to reduce in size, larger than that. And yes, you can be silly and you can do things like with this scale here, you can pick your base point and you can make it as big as your heart wants. Or you could do your scale and make it as tiny as you want. It's very hard to get it back that tiny. So what I'm going to do is just type in 0.1 and bring it down. Okay? So you can just freehand do whichever. Now, this is the part of the scale I want you to understand. What if I needed this box here to be the same height as this box here? Okay? But I need it to stay in the same proportion. Let's do this. I'm going to just show you the actual size of this box here. Oh, goodness. This says it's 18.2111. Okay? So I need to make this here as simple as it can be. Scale. This is very much like our rotate. We select our item. We right click. Our base point. We're going to take our base point here. Now, down here, copy or reference. Remember, if I click on copy, it'll make a copy of it. If I click on reference, I can do this. Reference. And now the computer is going to measure from here to here. Now, at this point, I can now type in that number over here. Or if I'm too lazy and I don't want to measure it like that, I can pick P for points or type in P. And I can say, hey, I want it to be this size from here to here. So you want to double check to make sure I was correct on that. Let's go in here and take this point to this point, 18.211, 18.211. That is the easiest way to use your scale. When you have something that you got to make it the same, always use your reference. Make the computer do the work for you. Okay? So that one's a real good one for you there. So scale is awesome. Okay, the last one I'm going to do with you is let's do a radius of 1 inch. And if, by the way, you see that this is all like jagged, this is supposed to be a smooth circle. The reason that is because I was in such a large area and I drew such a small circle that it's kind of bent its little shape around. If that's driving you crazy, you can always type in REGEN, and that's regen, and it actually smooths it out. That's so that the program doesn't have to work so hard to keep things nice and smooth. So don't have a heart attack if your circle starts getting all bumpy. REGEN. So it regenerates the drawing. It smooths it out for you. Okay. Next thing that we can have is the one that you're going to need a lot is offset right here. Offset's phenomenal. When you use your offset, you choose it. Now you can type in your number. Say I want this to be a 1/2 inch. If I pick the object and go outside it, it is going to continue to go a 1/2 inch out every time. And I can go to the inside also. And I don't think it'll go in any further. Nope, because that's too small. It won't let you go any further than that. So you can go ahead and do offset, and that works this way. It also works phenomenal when you've got something as a line, and say you need a line 1 inch away from there. Offset, 1, enter. You pick your line, you pick the direction. You pick your line, you pick your direction. Okay, now if you have your F12, the dynamic input on it, you can always pick your line, and as you're coming up here, you can now type in your number if you like. Say I want that one to be 0.5. So there's lots of other things to do with this offset. I will come back and explain 1 or 2 more things with this offset command once we get into our layers. And I will get into that layers probably on the next one, but I want you to understand about the offset. One thing I will tell you about the offset is when you choose your offset, you can choose erase. And what that does is if I choose erase, and it says erase source object after offsetting, if I say yes. So say I want this one here to be a 1/2 inch out, I type in my 0.5. If I pick this one and come out here, it's going to delete that one. So the main thing is you'll have to remember is if you erase it, then you need to go erase, and it'll say, do you want to erase the source? Now tell it no, and then you can go again, and you can pick it, and it's not going to erase it. So you can erase your source too. That's helpful. Trying to think with your offset, let me show you one other thing. Okay, with the lines, if I was to draw a triangle, now that was drawn as a polyline. Notice it's all one line. And if I was to draw a triangle using my lines. Okay, now, and let's go ahead and trim this little guy up. Oops. Put him there and get rid of him here. Say I wanted to do an offset with this. Let's say we're going to do a 1/4 inch. If I choose this one because it's a polyline, look what it's doing. It's keeping it all together as one. Nice and simple. If I do this one, look what's happening. Now do you see the difference on which would be easier to use? With this one, you're going to have to do all this, and you're going to be coming back and forth and going on to trim or extend or fillet the edges to get these in. So you see, this was much smarter to use a polyline than a regular line for it. Got that? All right, one other thing. Let's do this. Let's say we have a block sitting up here. Okay? Now, I would like to have this line to come up this distance right here. So I want this line to pop up here. Okay? And actually, let's do it this way so you can see that it truly works. Okay? I'm going to take that and just move it to the side so you can see. Okay, I want this line to offset up to this, and I don't know how big this is. I'm going to be too lazy to measure. If I go to my offset, what I can do instead of typing a number, I can pick a point. Now the computer's measured it. So then I take this and I pick up here. It will be the exact same size. So the computer does a lot of the work for you. So you can remember to do things like that. So they're the same size. So remember, offset, you either type the number simply, if you want 3 inches, you can pick it. You can go outside. If you're not sure of the measurement, if you go repeat offset, if I picked my point and I picked my point, I can then go here and do the same thing. So polylines are good, lines are fine, but sometimes you want the polylines. Offset, you can erase your lines. You can leave them there, you can type in your distance, or you can pick your distance. So that is all up to you with offset. Now remember, I will come back to offset once we get into layers because there's something there that's very helpful. The last thing we're going to do is after we do layers, I'm going to come into this array one so you can see this with colors. So that will help you out. Okay, so that one should be done now and we should be good.